Welcome to Around the Blockchain. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hi guys, this episode is sponsored by the Algorand Foundation. For more information on what they do, please follow the links in the description. Awesome. Michael, welcome to Around the Blockchain. If you can just introduce yourself for me.
Thanks, Ryan. How are you?
Good.
That's good. So Michael Cotton, based in Brisbane, Queensland, from Meld Ventures, and we build products within the Algorand ecosystem.
Yeah, awesome. And how did you get into the blockchain sort of crypto space, Michael?
Look, a good question, Ryan. So actually, probably a very long time ago now, about 2014, 2015, a friend of mine came and started telling me about Bitcoin, and he, said, "Oh, look, you should really look at this. You should buy some." And sort of being the sort of inquisitive person that I am, I instantly sort of threw some questions at him about the technology. And sadly, at the time, he couldn't actually answer those questions, which really for me meant I just sort of brushed it off as, oh, look, if you can't even sort of tell me about some of the fundamentals, it's obviously not something for me to have a look at. The price at the time was obviously drastically different to today. So it's sort of half of me wishes I had have probably taken it more seriously. But within a couple of years, another friend actually brought up the same thing. And this time could answer some of my questions and actually answer them in a way where I was really intrigued. I'm a big tech lover. So I started deep diving into blockchain. And that's really when I fell in love with the technology and realized, that it really was Internet 1.0 being reborn, and it was all all about to happen inside the crypto space and the blockchain space, and decided I needed to be a part of it.
Sorry, Michael, what year was this? The second time around?
Second time around was at 2016.
Yep, and you jumped on board and you decided to invest in Bitcoin and a couple of other crypto, or?
Yeah, look, I didn't do a lot of investing. I did a little bit of investing, but I really, for me, it was more about the tech and actually looking at the tech and looking what it would be capable of. So Ethereum was one of the majors in terms of building in the space at the time, and that's really where I sort of deep dived into utilizing the ERC20 and actually building out, for example, a gold product on blockchain. For me, the really big issue at the time was it's quite a different scenario in building out something like gold and a physical asset that's attached to blockchain, in that there's a far greater responsibility. If you end up with 100 kilos worth of gold on chain that's in crumbs in wallets around the world, where transaction fees mean those crumbs may never be recovered, the repercussions of that are storing and insuring that physical asset for life. And that was a real problem that I foresaw that would be an issue for us. So the responsibility for us to get the tech right for a product like gold was really important, because the ramifications for us were so much greater. So we got very close. We built out the whole product. We did all the smart contracts. We were ready to actually launch, and we held off at the time only because we just weren't confident that the fixes that were being promised were going to come to market. And it's 2021 now, and we haven't really seen those fixes come to fruition yet. Ethereum 2.0, in theory, we're on the brink, but it still is something that's an unanswered question in terms of the Ethereum space.
Yeah, absolutely. So you got involved around about 2016, a second time round. I think a lot of people have an interesting story as to when they get involved in the crypto space. Obviously, your story is unique to you and interesting as well. What were you doing before crypto?
So I actually started in the gold industry. I started straight out of high school. I started with a really sort of small amount of money I'd saved up working through high school. Started the business, entering an age-old business like gold and precious metals. It was definitely not something generally you do as a small individual. Most of the companies are 50 plus years old and really large organizations. So for me, it was something a little bit sort of different to enter that space. But in reality, I think one of the big reasons was I saw the opportunity. The actual industry itself was so archaic and so non-collaborative. There was a lot of opportunity for innovation and bringing technology and bringing efficiencies with technology to the space. So it's really where I saw the opportunity. So I had no background in the industry. I just really learned from the ground up, and slowly built that business out to be one of the largest gold companies in Australia. We now operate one of the highest rated security vaults in the country for precious metal storage. I'm still the major shareholder in that company, but I work solely in the blockchain side these days. I don't have as much to do with that business, other than the fact we obviously digitize precious metals with Meld, which, Imperial, my previous company, is actually a big part of that ecosystem.
Yeah, awesome. And look, why did you decide to go down the gold route? That's an interesting sort of career choice.
Yeah, look, there wasn't a particularly good reason at the time. I think it was more something that just kind of intrigued me, and I did see opportunity in the sense I felt like nothing had changed in the industry, and yet it seemed like such a huge industry and such a huge opportunity that the fact that there'd been so little innovation made me just feel like there was something to be done there. I think that really got cemented. I actually did a liquidation for a large chain of companies, and when I was about 25, and I bought out a large chain of jewelry stores that had gone bankrupt, which is really sad to see it happen. But I ended up really starting to delve into the gold industry at about that point, because in doing that deal, I processed a huge amount of gold through the recycling process of refining and turning it back into bullion and reusing that metal. And that really solidified my sort of destiny in the space. And that's when I really started to push more heavily into the actual precious metals and bullion and the asset and commodity side of precious metals.
You said that the gold industry sort of hadn't changed very much within like a 50-year period. Has blockchain sort of come along and been one of these very sort of disruptive technologies in the gold sort of industry?
Look, I would say not necessarily in the industry. You know, technology itself is incredibly useful for the industry. So things like streamlining supply chains, automating hedging, automating liquidity. It's not stuff that necessarily requires blockchain, and I think there can often be this sort of push to apply blockchain where it isn't necessarily needed. So I'm always really hyper conscious that you don't just push blockchain into products that don't need it. Where blockchain is such a powerful component for gold is that digital ownership, you know, that representation of gold to be used as a currency again. And I think that was really where we started to focus in on. So Meld Gold, to give you some insight, Ryan, you know, its focus is not about creating a gold product for ourselves as a company. It's really about building out a digital gold standard that any gold company in the world can be a part of, with the long-term intention of rebuilding a banking style system in an intrinsic asset such as gold. So the idea being that you could go to a local gold business anywhere in the world, bring in metal to digitize, take metal out that when you bring back your digital version, really like how the banks are intended to operate with currency, but with physical metal backing the assets, and independent businesses globally are part of this independent distributed physical gold network.
Yeah, awesome. I love that. That sounds fascinating. Very, very interesting. Um, Look, tell me what you guys are sort of currently working on, and then I guess go into maybe a bit about the why you guys are doing that as well.
Yeah, for sure. So at the moment, beyond obviously Mel Gold, so most of that business is actually outside the blockchain. It's in the traditional ecosystem, which is, you know, businesses like MKS PAMP, one of the largest gold traders in the world, Heraeus, they're all a part of the ecosystem and supporting that physical traditional gold ecosystem, with technology changing the way that entire process of gold flows. You know, that's obviously still a big focus for us. But, you know, we built on the Algorand network. Now, Algorand is an incredible blockchain tech. The team themselves, like Silvio Micali, the founder, Turing Award winner, you know, dubbed to the grandfather of cryptography, one of the incredible minds in the space, you know, invented zero knowledge proofs, accredited with inventing a whole range of different algorithms and mathematical concepts that have been the fundamentals for a lot of blockchain technology development. And he decided to actually develop his own blockchain tech and brought out Algorand. And the actual tech itself is incredible. In terms of solving the trilemma, you know, he's one of the few that have done a really amazing job at delivering an incredible technology that solves a lot of the issues that blockchain technology faces at the moment. So for us, that's where we built on Meld Gold. And from there, it's really been looking at what does this sort of next generation of blockchain look like, and what do products in the next generation of blockchain look like. So we've had a really heavy focus on building out the Algorand ecosystem. This next 6 months in the Algorand ecosystem sees an incredible amount of projects launching, including a lot of projects around DeFi. You know, I think Algorand actually has an interesting place in the future of what institutional style DeFi looks like as well. You know, the technology is incredibly fast, 4.4 seconds for a transaction at the moment. That time is going down. It's actually getting faster over time. Transaction cost is under 0.1 of a cent. So in terms of being decentralized, low cost and fast, it has this magical trifecta of attributes that make it really powerful and really well suited to not just DeFi, but the future of what finance looks like in terms of being blockchain related. So for us, you know, what that really also meant was, at the moment, Algorand isn't actually, it's not EVM compatible, so it doesn't simply connect into a lot of other blockchain compatible wallets and a lot of other blockchain platforms. So we've been working on interoperability. So Algo Mint is the project we currently have a lot of focus on, which is building out that interoperability of allowing seamless flow of assets both in and out of the Algorand ecosystem. But long term, you know, that project's meant to allow all the different blockchains to connect and actually seamlessly move between them. So that's really our end goal at the moment, is creating that seamless interoperability between blockchains. So a great example would be Bitcoin. It's one of the first assets we're bridging into Algorand. Once Bitcoin bridges into Algorand and we end up with an Algorand wrapped Bitcoin, paying for a cup of coffee becomes viable because it's 4 seconds, 0.1 of a cent. Actually doing atomic swaps and peer-to-peer trading becomes really, really simple and easy and low cost. So, Algorand also natively has atomic swaps, which is where two parties can agree on the parameters of a transaction, and the transaction doesn't complete until the two parties have actually completed each side. So that idea of true peer-to-peer trading with assets like Bitcoin become fast, low cost, and extremely viable.
Can you just sort of explain for the viewers' sake why interoperability is quite important?
Yeah, for sure. So I think probably looking at what the future looks like for blockchain, I definitely don't think it's a single chain future. I don't think it's a case where one chain will rule them all, to use that Lord of the Rings reference. But in reality, it will be a multi-chain future, and I think that'll be based on a few factors. It'll be particular usability or particular functionality within certain blockchains that allow for certain things to be better suited to certain blockchains. I think there'll also be a geographical side to it as well. I think we'll see certain blockchains that have heavy focuses in certain countries where broader adoption has been stronger. And so the ability to seamlessly move through this global financial system based on immutable blockchain is a really core idea to what this future ecosystem looks like. So the ability then to move Bitcoin across all of these ecosystems, move gold, move Algorand, move Ethereum, move any of these key assets around the different ecosystems is definitely a much needed item for the future.
You're not the first person that's actually said that to me, surprisingly enough, about the multi-chain sort of future, and then different sort of chains having a more popular use case based on geography. I find that quite interesting as well. Where did you sort of come up with that idea?
Look, I think it's probably more if you look at anything, they're very rarely is a single product that really conquers the world in its particular department. There's always challenger brands, there's always challenger products. I also believe that too large can actually really be a problem. I think when products and organizations get too big, actually controlling them and having people who are accountable and passionate at different ranks inside the organization tends to not be something that flows with time and size. It's I've always been quite a strong believer in the idea that too big can be problematic. And blockchain itself is decentralized, but the idea of having these challenger brands also keeps everyone accountable. Also keeps the entire ecosystem growing and keeps the that competition actually drives growth and drives innovation. So I'm always really big on that idea of products being out there and challenging each other, and that collective growth that you see with that challenge. I think the other big part of that too is I don't think any technology is going to be able to solve every problem. So I think we will see this niche style development where we will see certain blockchains that are really, really well designed and established for particular use cases.
Great answer. I totally agree with all that you've just sort of said there as well. Look, Ethereum sort of was probably the more popular blockchain back in the day, and still obviously is to start building stuff on top of. You guys have obviously chosen to go with Algorand. Can you sort of explain to me why you've done that?
Yeah, so I guess Ethereum, number one, it's by far the heaviest used blockchain in the world, and so it's really easy to build within a blockchain like Ethereum. In terms of once you build, you've already got a huge ecosystem. You've already got a lot of other businesses. You've got a lot of other products you can lean on, whether that be wallets or whether that be distribution functions or exchanges or dexes. So the ecosystem is really well established. That's a really strong incentive for products to build inside the Ethereum ecosystem. On the other hand, you've got products like Algorand. Solana is a really good example as well. A great tech that aren't EVM compatible, that really have redefined the actual development side of how you build inside blockchain. What it means is the barriers to entry are higher, but in terms of where the future lies, if you look at the cost and speed of Ethereum and other products that we're now seeing, parachains and side chains being built around to try and get over those issues. In reality, Algorand doesn't need to solve these problems. You don't hear anyone talking about Algorand solving issues of speed or transaction time or security. And it natively is already built into this actual technology. So what it means is the reason we picked it was, number one, we know it's going to be one of the major blockchains in the future. We're fully aware that it's going to be a longer road to actually see success, because we were really getting in at the foundation level with Algorand. But I think what's really important about that is, to wind back the clock and get in at the foundational level of Ethereum would be an incredible feat. And I think the benefit we have now in with the Algorand is, not just do we have the opportunity to get into the ground level, but it's really clear that the technology is incredible, and the team behind Algorand are equipped to also face those challenges of future technology. With Silvio, one of the brightest minds in mathematics and algorithmic mathematics in the world, his team includes people like Nobel Prize winners for economics, includes some of the brightest computer engineers and computer scientists in the world that are part of the actual Algorand team. I think if anyone's poised to actually bring the future of what this technology looks like, it's a team like the team behind Algorand.
And are you finding that there are many other projects deciding to go with Algorand as well?
Yeah, so at the moment we're seeing a really big push into the space. So the next sort of 6 months, there's a whole flurry of great products coming to market. I think what we'll see with that flurry of products is we'll start to see people really appreciate Algorand and the technology and the use cases. So, for the products that are building or built in Algorand, our job is really to provide that incentive to bring people into the ecosystem to actually use the technology, to really experience what the difference is and the advantages of using Algorand tech. Because once we can achieve that, I call it sticky equity. We'll spend the funds, create the incentives, drag people from other ecosystems into Algorand, with the idea that the funds and the use cases and the users will stick inside the ecosystem once they actually get to experience what the use case, what the usability is of the actual technology.
Yeah, very interesting. It seems to be like it's becoming a more and more popular blockchain for people to sort of build on top of,
Yeah,
which is good.
look, I think it's because also the future outlook, like every sort of issue you hear in terms of what needs to be fixed inside blockchain technology, these are all issues that are, for a majority, are solved in Algorand. It's got an incredibly low carbon footprint. It recently went carbon negative in terms of every transaction now has zero carbon footprint, fast, secure, low cost. It solves a lot of the issues that we're facing. That means a lot of the use cases that we talk about being real world use cases for blockchain technology, are really viable in Algorand, which really aren't possible in other blockchain techs. Like I said, even with Ethereum, buying a cup of coffee on chain with Ethereum, the gas costs alone would be double a cup of coffee on a good day.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the biggest downfalls with Ethereum, unfortunately. Just the gas costs are insane, like trying to, I speak to a few retail sort of level investors that are just looking to kind of, dip their toe in the water and just sort of see what's out there. And they try and get involved in some of these projects and they don't want to spend big dollars, like a couple $100. And the gas fees that they have to pay on that one particular transaction is just, yeah, mind boggling.
Yeah, look, I think it'll be interesting to see how that changes in this next generation as well. Like, because I think we're also seeing, in terms of the exchange side, DEX is on Algorand, the ability to trade from Ethereum to Bitcoin wrapped on Algorand. The idea that the actual transaction costs you 0.1% to do that kind of trade, and the fact that you can do it as an atomic swap in terms of this trustless, risk-free peer-to-peer transaction on the Algorand network, really changes the way that I think transacting will happen in the future and the way trading will happen in the future. It really opens up to, what a lot of blockchain maximalists talk about being what the dream scenario is for blockchain. A lot of that is really viable on the Algorand network.
Sorry, can you just explain for the viewers what an atomic swap is?
Yeah, so basically an atomic swap is a transaction that two parties agree to, and the transaction only completes when both parties meet the criteria of the transaction. So a really good example would be, Ryan, like I said, I'm going to sell you, 100 Algorand, and you're going to pay me, 1 ETH. As payment, we agreed to the transaction. The ETH would have to be wrapped on the Algorand network. So let's just say your ETH is wrapped on the Algorand network with Algo Mint. We agreed to the transaction. We set the parameters. I then send my algos. They actually sit in kind of like a custody on chain, waiting for you to complete your side of the transaction. When you do and you meet the parameters, the transaction completes, and we both receive the assets that we wanted to achieve in our transaction. If we don't, the transaction times out and the assets return to the sender. So you can imagine at the moment, if you want to do a Bitcoin transaction, that kind of transactability isn't possible where you can do a trustless peer-to-peer transaction. You've either got to send the assets and trust that they're going to deliver their side of the agreement, or you've got to go to an exchange or a DEX or a centralized exchange to complete that kind of trade. So the ability to actually have that trustless finance without a third party sitting in the middle as the gatekeeper, that's a really interesting advancement in what we'll see actually taking place in terms of the way we transact in the future.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Look, can you talk to me a little bit more about Meld Ventures and sort of what you guys are doing there, and maybe also how you guys sort of tokenize, real world assets like gold?
Yeah, for sure. So Meld Ventures, our real focus is in supporting new and interesting projects coming to blockchain. So we really do look at innovative ideas. We look at the technology, the problems they're trying to solve. We do have a strong focus on Algorand projects, only because we obviously really believe in the technology. So for us, it's, the perfect scenario is being inside the Algorand network. A really big part of Meld Ventures is actually incubating ideas within the Algorand ecosystem as well. So identifying strong founders or identifying strong individuals, whether they CPOs or CTOs or GMs that can actually bring products to life in the Algorand ecosystem is also a really, really major part of the business. And then in terms of digitizing physical assets, so we have Meld Gold. We also incubated another project called Originals Only. So that project is being run by Hippo Labs out of Canada, an incredible development team, built the Robinhood platform, built the Algorand wallet, really, really fantastic team. And it's a good example because it's digitizing physical assets as well. And it kind of has a similar role as Meld Gold, in the sense that what Meld Gold does is we digitize, we take physical gold in trusted custody vaults around the world. That gold is then digitized and represented on blockchain. We have regular audits, including our own patented audit technology to do really regular, like even daily audits or hourly audits to ensure that gold is accounted for. So that's sort of the really sort of basic version. There's a lot more complexity to how that functions. Where we sort of see a really interesting difference in what this next generation of tech looks like for us is the ability to actually NFC and RFID tag bars, but also tag physical collectibles. So a great example would be diamonds, wine, physical trading cards, coins, banknotes, and have those products actually digitized on chain to be tradable, but also to have a live 24-hour audit system that's actually reading all those NFC tamper-proof tags and all those products inside a vault. So for us, we're really working towards making that hybrid model of real-world assets and digitizing them the most trustless and transparent version that they can be.
Yeah, awesome. Sounds like there's a lot going on the Algorand blockchain.
Look, it's going to be a very exciting 12 months. I'm sure there will be no sleep.
Anything that you can allude to, or too early?
Look, I'm actually bringing out an article shortly about what's happening in the DeFi space, but it's probably one of the most exciting areas for Algorand because, in reality, Algorand is a layer one blockchain tech that doesn't require a layer two. In fact, most of the layer twos we see building off things like Ethereum, even the layer twos lack any of the great functionality and the great tech behind Algorand. Algorand, in essence, could be a layer two for any blockchain in the world that requires that side chain or requires that layer two development. Actually bridging into Algorand is a great solve. So I really think we're going to see a really incredibly strong migration of DeFi into the Algorand network, especially, Ryan, and not to sort of ramble on about DeFi, but especially when you take into account things like impermanent loss, things like APY, even though some of the APYs delivered in the Ethereum network are incredible, big chunks of that APY are reduced just by the actual transaction costs and the limited transactions that can be done. You can't do small transactions with Uniswap because the cost of transacting makes it just unviable, makes it not efficient. So the ability to have those kind of products on the Algorand network, not just do you see a lot more transactions be possible to be done where that APY can increase due to additional transaction capability, but a huge amount of that APY is no longer eaten up by gas fees and by miner fees. So I think we're going to see a really interesting sort of 12 months of DeFi growth in the Algorand ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds very, very exciting. I'm pretty excited myself to sort of hear what sort of happens in the next 12 months. Look, you touched on this before. What do you sort of think the future of blockchain looks like?
Look, I think we'll see one thing. I think we'll see more real world use cases, and I kind of want to distinguish that in the sense that we are seeing a lot of products, especially in the NFT space at the moment. We are seeing a lot of people trying to force products into NFTs that probably don't belong there. I think what we'll start to see is we'll start to see a lot of that. And I feel like every sort of boom, the last boom we saw this same sort of problem happen, where a lot of things were trying to sort of shove blockchain into them to try and leverage off this booming ecosystem. So I think we'll see a couple of things. I think we'll see people become better versed in the technology itself, have a better understanding on how to use it. I think we'll see a strong growth in the broader community actually adopting to blockchain. And in turn, I think we'll see products that don't belong there. I think we'll see less of that sort of crazy, let's just blockchain enable it, or let's just NFT it. I think we'll see a lot of that sort of arbitrage itself away. And I think we'll start to see more real world use cases start to come forward. Things like El Salvador adopting Bitcoin is one of those first steps to the world starting to really see some real world institutional governmental traction towards blockchain adoption on a grander scale.
Sorry, you mentioned that there are some products and that sort of thing that are, becoming NFTs or, getting stored on the blockchain that you don't believe should be there. Can you give some examples of that?
Yeah, look, I think what we're seeing is a lot of, what they would call IP being blockchain enabled. And I think they're kind of, they're probably just things that the excitement of the NFT world and the growth in the NFT space has given them value that in reality in 5 or 10 years will probably not have that greater value. I think there's some fantastic, like NFTs are an incredible concept and definitely a part of the future of what we see. But, I think the idea of creating so many photographers, for example, are such incredible artists in what they actually capture, and there's some fantastic wildlife Australian photographers who spend 4 days camping in one spot in the middle of a lagoon to get this incredible photo. And at the moment, that artistic work is really undervalued. And I think things like NFTs can actually bring an incredible value to that industry. I think it can bring an amazing value to digital artists. I think there's a huge use case for NFTs there. I think music has an incredible use case. One of the great ones recently that the guys at Originals Only were playing with was actually turning a song into hash code and embedding it into an NFT token, and then being able to play it in an NFT decipher on your phone and actually listen to your music in the form of an NFT. That kind of technology is a must for the future of music, without a doubt. So I think there's such incredible use cases, and then there's this sort of myriad of clutter that's ended up in the NFT space that isn't. It also has made it really hard, when you go on some of the NFT platforms, deciphering what's valuable, what's by a quality artist, what's a real artist, what's someone who's just gone and got an picture off the internet. That kind of muddled marketplace is really what we're seeing at the moment. So I don't want to point out anything too particular, because I also don't want to sort of stab anyone in terms of saying they're doing the wrong thing. But I'm sure people will understand what I'm saying when I talk about, there is this clear distinction between stuff that so obviously belongs in blockchain and belongs as NFTs. And then there's stuff that just kind of doesn't make sense. Even in the physical assets, Ryan, like diamonds seems like an odd thing to have as an NFT, but the reason it actually is such a fantastic use case is so many diamonds, like Argyle pink diamonds, Australian diamonds, so many of them are traded in superannuation funds, traded as investments. If they're actually digitized and there's an NFT associated with those diamonds, number one, you can have all the information required for resale. So all high quality images, all the certification actually embedded as a part of the NFT token, which means anytime you go to resell, all the data you need to make it easy to resell is actually there inside that digital container. The other really interesting piece, though, is if it stays in storage, number one, the storage and insurance on that diamond is a fraction of the cost of storing it yourself. So you have this low ongoing cost of ownership. You then also have, if you've got it in a superannuation fund, for example, you've got the live audit system. That means you don't have to have annualized audits done. All that kind of admin work is automated for you at almost no cost compared to an actually expensive and painful task when you come to do that yourself. The other part they become extremely liquid. You want to then trade those diamonds. To actually trade them as an NFT becomes incredibly simple. You can trade them at velocity. You can trade them really simply. You can decide one night at 2 a.m. you want to sell it. And the process is really simple. At the moment, if you wanted to sell an Argyle pink diamond and you had it physically, that process, can be really painful, and it can also be hard to identify how you even go about that and how you achieve the best price. So digitizing real world assets has a really fascinating, powerful element. And creating that hybrid where you can create the trustless storage, insurance, and accountability of those assets that are then issued on chain. I think that's really the goal of projects like Originals Only, is to really bring that magical hybrid between the digital space and the physical space.
Have diamonds actually been tokenized? I'm not actually aware.
We have seen some interesting use cases of diamonds being tokenized. I think what we sort of, and this is, I guess, probably speaks to some of the limitations. Ryan, I'm sorry if I don't know, sometimes I talk really fast. So if I have been talking really fast, I do apologize. But
No, that's cool.
I tend to spit out a lot of information. So we have actually seen diamonds tokenized on blockchain. What we haven't seen is the technology hasn't been developed to the point where you can trade individual stones, for example, really easily. So at the moment, we see a couple of projects out there that, for example, you get like a cluster of stones, and the idea is it's meant to be $10,000 worth of stones in this little sealed group. Interesting idea, but it really isn't what diamond investing is normally traditionally looks like. If you wanted to own an Argyle pink diamond's a really great example. It's a single buy use case. It really makes a lot of sense as individual tokenized stones. You know exactly what you're getting, certified by particular parties like GIA, for example, where you can have absolute certainty of authenticity and absolute certainty of what you're actually owning, which also makes it a lot easier for resale. I think a part of the reason we're seeing more of these stones grouped up into these packages is also probably to do with the transaction costs, and the technology not being designed to digitize at scale in a way that's also physically decentralized. And I think that's where a lot of the hard work goes in. I think this is also why we still haven't seen a huge amount of high quality NFT products launch in market, because developing the tech is actually difficult and it is hard work and it's not an overnight success. So, there's quite a few good projects like Originals Only building out in the NFT space that are doing incredible work, but it's going to be time, it's going to be 6-12 months before we start seeing some of those projects actually finish development of that future version and future proofing those NFT markets.
Yeah, awesome. Look, do you think Bitcoin and gold are friends or foes?
They're friends. Probably depends on who you talk to, but I'm going to say they're friends. I think they're really different. Like when I talk about gold, gold's had 5,000 years of price discovery. It's had 5,000 years to spread itself across the globe. A majority of the planet own gold in some form or another, and the entire planet generally understands the value of gold and accepts the value of gold. Gold has had a life, beyond anything any of us will ever see. So I think it's got this huge advantage in that it is the most decentralized asset in the world. It's in more hands than any other asset in the planet. It's also, which a lot of people don't realize, it's the only currency / commodity accepted at local currency value everywhere in the world. So it is actually the most accepted currency in the world. So it really is the currency. It is the global currency. The reason Bitcoin is different is Bitcoin is less of a currency. I think even though it gets talked about as a currency, it's more of an investment. It's more of a speculative investment. Because then I think a really good way to sort of analyze that is majority of the world earns a living wage, which means if you're earning a living wage, you do not want volatility. You need certainty of value. You need to be ensure that the money you have today will pay the rent tomorrow, will pay for groceries, will pay for all your actual needs the next day. And Bitcoin volatility, even today, it's been an incredibly volatile day for Bitcoin. That doesn't allow for that currency side of existence for a majority of the world. So I often talk about it in quite different ways. I really see gold as the future of where currency is heading if we are to have a global currency that isn't fiat. Whereas I see Bitcoin as still on its path of one, price discovery, but also it isn't a currency. It is more of a speculative or a store of value kind of asset.
Do you think they sort of both have a place in this ever modernizing world?
Look, without a doubt, I think they play different roles, but without a doubt, they both have a great place in the future. And I think that dynamic of how they function will vary over time, but they definitely play two distinct roles in the future economy.
Yeah, awesome. Look, we've been going for about 35 minutes. Michael, do you have any sort of closing thoughts for the viewers?
Look, probably Ryan, and look, it's probably sort of less knowing about how much knowledge your viewers have on the space. But I often say to people, look at the tech, do your research, dig into the teams, dig into the kind of work they're doing, and I think that's the most interesting part, and I think that's the biggest indicator of analyzing what the future holds and what technologies are really going to be a part of this next generation. So I would suggest if anyone at home that's interested in the space, I'd start digging into some of these different blockchain techs that are out there and start analyzing the differences and really get your head around what that technology looks like for the future.
Awesome, Michael. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Thanks, Ryan. A pleasure, mate. Appreciate it.